Hello, welcome to the conversation on News Central Television. This is the program where we bring you up to speed with all the political happenings on the African continent. I'm Binga Aboroa.
And I am Rita Omodia. Today on the conversation, we will be discussing the counter move by the Nigerian government to put an end to the ongoing university lecturer strike in the country. The government is not only accusing the Academic Staff Union of Universities ASUU of corruption, but it has also, in an attempt to clip the union's wings, approved 2 new factions.
We'll also turn our attention to Uganda, looking at the aftermath of the distasteful comments made by President Yoweri Kaguta Museveni's son, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, on Twitter, calling for an invasion of neighboring Kenya. Of course, the government of Kenya did not find this funny, and as a result, Kainerugaba has been relieved of his duty as commander of the Ugandan People's Defense Forces. However, he did get a promotion to a 4-star general, which has further drawn huge concerns in the region. Interesting times on the continent of Africa. First son's behaving badly. We did talk about the first son of Equatorial Guinea the other day, Theodore Obiang, and now General Kainerugaba. It's not the first time he's been caught in controversy with his tweets. Yeah, there have been a series of tweets coming from him, and some would say he's trying to be hilarious or trying to create a humor, but I wouldn't say the words of the tweet saying we could, as much as possible, invade the Nairobi capital of Kenya. Knowing the sensitivity of his position and how powerful he is in Uganda, he should have been more circumspect with his comments. All right, we'll discuss all that of Uganda and Uganda's President's son, Museveni. But right now, let's switch attentions to Nigeria. Yes. Now, as the world celebrates Teachers' Day, incessant strikes, corruption, sexual misconduct, underfunding are some of the issues in the front burner in Nigeria's tertiary institutions. The federal government on Tuesday registered 2 new trade unions for workers in the university and teaching hospitals, while the academic staff Union of University strike lingers. The unions are the National Association of Medical and Dental Academics, NAMDA, and the Congress of African University Academics, CONUA. Now, the Minister of Labour and Productivity, Chris Ngige, who spoke while presenting the certificates of registration to the 2 unions, explained that the 2 bodies will exist alongside ASUU. Meanwhile, Nigeria's President Muhammadu Buhari says sexual harassment in the country's universities has reached alarming proportions, and law and order agencies are rightly treating it as a form of corruption, emphasizing that corruption in the education sector is undermining the federal government's investment. This is coming at a very wonderful time when we're celebrating World Teachers' Day. And now joining us to discuss this, we have Dr. Adetunji Oguyemi, Associate Professor of Economic History, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. Thank you so much, Dr. Oguyemi, for joining us on the conversation. All right, we will try to get to him subsequently. Connection with Dr. Oguyemi. Yeah. So, I mean, what comes to my mind is, why is this coming at this time? You know, students have been at home for 8 months, and it's just now that you realize that sexual harassment is a problem in Nigerian universities. And you know, the back and forth with the federal government and ASUU, first of all, there was an order from the federal government saying that ASUU should go back, lecturers should go back to the classroom. ASUU appealed it, and then we're having the faction now. This CONUA, what exactly will this union constitute? Because we already have a union. So these are questions that the experts will answer. But it's 8 months into this and campaign season has kicked off. What my grouse is this. Students are at home. Apart from them losing academic time, there's a lot of psychological trauma that comes with just sitting at home, and anxiety, not knowing what the future is. And people are going about their election campaigns like, you know, business as usual, like nothing is happening. So I wonder what kind of conscience they have to go about business like nothing happens. And then the blame game is quite tiring. We have ASUU blame the federal government. We have the federal government saying that ASUU is not ready to end the strike, but the students are at the losing end. You know, NANS came out earlier and said that they would not allow future campaigns to go on, but I don't know what happened, whether they got tired or something went along the line, but definitely we'll be discussing all this as we celebrate the World Teachers' Day. And joining us for this, we have Dr. Adetunji Oguyemi. He is an associate professor
of Economic History at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. Dr. Ogunyemi, thank you so much for joining us in the conversation.
Thank you for having me.
All right, wonderful. So I'll begin with this. The Trade Unions Act states that another trade union cannot be registered by the minister in a sector where a similar one is already existing. So on what basis has CONUA been registered, and do you see it as a valid or invalid union?
Oh, well, I will rather prefer that any union within the university system that is making any adverse claim to CONUA's registration should approach the courts. It is not for me to lay their cases for them. Let them approach the court. As far as I'm concerned, I know for sure that the laws of our land says that if a group of people within an organization feels very strongly and they have the evidence to lay before the minister in charge of labor that they are no longer represented and their interests are no longer being protected by their union, they deserve and they have the right to associate under another name. And that is what the minister has done. He has apprehended that and he has registered the Congress of Nigerian University Academics. And that is it. So if anyone has any adverse claim, can he please proceed to the court to challenge it? At any rate, whatever is in any law whatsoever, is inferior to what is contained in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, as ordered, which guarantees, without any equivocation, the right to freedom of association. And that is what the Congress of University Academics have exercised, period.
Now, looking at the establishment and registration of this Congress of University Academics, what impact will it have on ASUU and its functions? How do they differ?
Oh, of course. CONUA differs from ASUU with respect to its philosophy. And what is that philosophy? The philosophy of constructive engagement. Not acquiescence, not criminal acquiescence, as we find in some very senior civil servants. No, and not industrial elitism, as ASUU has shown itself to be, but in constructive engagement. Do not forget, history as well as the practice of politics, including trade union politics, supports negotiating, conciliating, sitting down to discuss issues. In fact, it supports lobbying the crème de la crème society and the elite, particularly the political elite within the system, to get things done. Things don't have to be done at all times by resorting to strikes. Strikes may be legitimate, but I tell you, the overuse of the instrument of strikes and industrial actions actually destroys the system, which you think you want to protect in the first instance. That's the difference. The difference between CONUA and ASUU is in constructive engagement rather than in combative industrial elitism.
Okay, we'll go deeper on that because we've seen other unions come out. I mean, when ASUU came out, that was what they were talking about, defending the rights of lecturers, but we'll go deeper into that later on. Now, let's look at the grievances from ASUU. On September 21, the Industrial Court ordered ASUU to call off its ongoing strike, and subsequently, union filed an appeal seeking a stay of execution of the judgment. Now, the Minister of Labour, Ngige, had warned ASUU at the weekend against the consequences of contempt of court because the lecturers have still not gone back to the classes despite the court order. How do you see this playing out for ASUU, and how do you think this issue can be best addressed?
I think ASUU, as led by the respected Professor Osodeke, may need to explain to the country why they are not back. As far as I am concerned, and I'm not a member of ASUU, and ASUU is not an organization that is compulsory that I must join. As a university teacher of more than 20 years experience, I don't have a duty to join any industrial union. And if I must join, it is free exit and free entry. I'm a member of CONUA and I've never been on strike. In fact, our members are not on strike. What actually happened is that the university management and authorities closed down the universities, sent the students away from their lectures and prevented and has continued to prevent CONUA members from exercising their duties or from performing their duties of teaching, research, and community work. But what we have done is that we have resigned to be doing the research in our private laboratories, in our private dealings, as well as community work. But we are not on strike. The Congress of University Academics are not on strike, and they are not interested in this strike.
Now, Dr. Oguyemi, President Muhammadu Buhari had some choice words for lecturers. He did say that university lecturers, that the sexual harassment in the country's universities have reached an alarming proportion, and that law and order agencies are rightly treating it as a form of corruption. How big is the issue of sexual harassment and corruption in Nigeria's ivory towers? And what are your thoughts on the president's use of language, and why is it coming at this time?
It's rather interesting that the president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is using one single brush to paint every system. If there has been any system in this country that has stood the test of times in terms of morality and standing by the rules of the game, it is the Nigerian university system. So it is a pity that our president is levying a general accusation here. Look, the issue of sexual harassment.
But sir, do you agree that there's some bad eggs in the system?
Please let me clarify this.
Yes.
The issue of sexual harassment happens everywhere, anywhere, in the banking sector, in Nollywood, in Bollywood, in all matters of woods. It happens in the Nigerian marketing system. It happens in the engineering profession. It happens everywhere. And for the president to now begin to say it now, I mean, he's just playing, with due respect to his person. I think it is like playing to the gallery. The issue is not about raising, if there are people that are apprehended, I mean, or people that should be apprehended, by all means apprehend them. I can say with all authority of my honor that the Obafemi University where I teach, where I've been researching and doing my community work, has zero tolerance for sexual harassment. And in 2 or 3 cases where that has been proven, the lecturers have been appropriately disciplined by the system. Can the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission please do the same in Nigerian ministries, departments, and agencies where we have worst form of corruption? In fact, the Accountant General of the Federation, has been reportedly, it has been reported that it took about 100 billion from the system. What has the system done to that? I mean, are there no sexual harassment in Nigerian ministries, in agencies? I mean, come on, let the president be less sensational.
You know, we say we take things one step at a time. You talk about corruption in all areas, and we cannot deny the fact that corruption still occurs in the educational system. Now, aside from sexual harassment, another form of corruption which the president highlighted was the fact of cash for marks. We have situations where if you want a higher grade, you should pay money to the lecturers. I mean, what do you have to say about that?
Well, it has to be an issue that is about facts and evidence. By all means, if you see that instance, you sanction it. It is not for, it's not a thing that you bring for window dressing. I mean, if there have been cases that sexual harassment or money for marks had been reported and you are not sanctioning it, then it is a failure of the judicial, if you like, the suppressive apparatuses of the state. I mean, if people are bringing in fake goods into the system, and your problem is that the association in charge of, or the Managerial Association of Nigeria are bringing in fake goods, what is the role of the Standard Organization of Nigeria? What is the role of the university system, of the suppressive apparatuses? Let's take them to court, not to come to the press and begin to pander to things that have very little evidentiary value. It's actually it's too little evidentiary value. If there are evidences to say that a lecturer had failed, neglected in his duty to do what is right, or is actually pursuing criminal disposition, then apprehend him. Apprehend him. Okay. It is only when you have failed, the university system fails to apprehend such a person, then you begin to complain. So we are expecting the same thing, for example, that the Nigerian president will apprehend those people that are stealing our oil in the Niger Delta area. Those that are doing bunkering, powerful people that the reports have it are actually members from the suppressive apparatuses of the state, from the armed forces. Can you please apprehend those ones?
Okay.
And let us see, maybe we can learn by examples.
Now, Dr. Oguyemi, the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, says the strike is for the soul of Nigeria's universities. They say they are underfunded, infrastructure is in decay. In your own opinion, how would you assess the state of public universities in Nigeria? And what way would you think would be the best? Because you said ASUU shouldn't resort to strikes at the slightest provocation. How do we address this infrastructure, finance, and the general state of education in Nigeria?
The needs assessment report. We have the needs assessment report. It's available in all the ASUU branches throughout the country. I have a copy. So the needs assessment report is clear with respect to the state of infrastructure and funding in the Nigerian universities. It's called all Nigerian universities, no single exception. It's called them less than 3 out of 10 marks. They are in a woeful state. And ASUU is making a sound point by saying that government has a duty to finance, to develop, to do something with respect to the human capital in the university system, the infrastructure system, and to do what is just right with respect to obeying the laws on university autonomy. ASUU's positions are sound, no doubt about that. Okonwa only disagrees with ASUU with methodology as to how to implement this. And the methodology of ASUU is strikes, which is injuring and destroying the system. We say no to this, but we do not disagree with the fact that the government has been neglecting its duties. In fact, rather than the government doing what is right within the university system, it has gone ahead to be establishing universities as rural amenities and using it as political to politically reward its supporters. Virtually every senator now has a university in his village. In fact, my state governor did not just put the university of the state in his village, he put it in front of his house. He ensured that the state university was sited in front of his house. And that is Adekunle Ajasin University in Akungba, Akoko, in Ondo State. Sited in front of the house of Adebayo Adeparati. So the Nigerian political system is a shame, it's a disgrace to the system.
So what next, Dr. Oguyemi? There have been memorandum of actions, memorandum of understanding. As you rightly said, the federal government has still not answered to the plea of ASUU. And you say that the methodology of ASUU is totally wrong, that strike is not an option.
Yes.
So what next?
Yes, of course. When you have a system like this, there are so many other options. Of course, there are the options of waking up the laws of the university system to engage the government. For example, you can go to court to challenge the government when it says, do not charge fees. You can say, no, our law guarantees us fundamental, right with respect to independence, the autonomy of the universities. For example, at OAU, the university charged students what is called acceptance fees. And the National Assembly wrote to the VC, including a threat to him to return the money, just 20,000 naira per student. The VC was forced to return the money. Now, this was what we depended on to finance our basic facilities like electricity, like dam, like roads, like repairing the classrooms, like buying chalk and buying markers. And the National Assembly, the federal government is not just sincere. It is appropriating and reprobating at the same time. So what do? You approach the court to stop government from interfering in the university financial system and to get our independence by way of a court injunction. You apply for another of mandamus, of course, to compel government to do the needful. That's the method. You can also use the method of what we call lobbying. You lobby the National Assembly. It is not after the National Assembly has passed the national budget that you begin to look for how to insert your allowances. Before the budget is passed, we have the legislators as our friends too, as members of the university system, as our alumni, and they can be lobbied to increase allocation to the university system in remuneration, as well as in other areas of capital expenditure. State fund too, you can approach it, and if it's also it. These are periods that are taken. It is, saying that strikes are absolutely wrong, but we are saying that it should not be wielded all the time, at all times within the Nigerian university system, because it destroys the system anyway, does more evil than good.
Now, Dr. Ogunyemi, before we begin to wrap things up, the union, ASUU, is calling for the review of Nigeria's Universities Commission Act to tackle the proliferation of universities. A lot of private sector businessmen see that, because of incessant strikes, there's a gap. And of course, ASUU can absorb all the students that want to attend university in Nigeria. The federal and state universities can absorb all of them. Nigeria's House of Representatives also lamented the continued establishment of universities by the federal government when it appears unable to fund the existing ones. Should there be stringent conditions for the new universities that are being coming into existence from the private sector and also the federal government?
Three things. First of all, I agree with you absolutely. And this is not just your statement, but it is the product of a research that Nigeria is over university. You even have some state universities having 3 state universities. When they have not succeeded in effectively financing just one, they go ahead establishing several universities. Ondo State, for example, has a University of Technology in Okitipupa, has a University of Medical Sciences in Ondo, has another conventional university in Akungba. 3 universities for a state that cannot balance its budget. That cannot balance its budget. Now, the second issue has to do with, do you know that it is not true that the Nigerian system don't have absorptive capacity to take the students? The truth is that we take all manners of students. In fact, only 35% of the students admitted in Nigeria are admitted on merit. 65% are outside of merit. Outside of merit, like catchment area, ministers list, VCs list, educationally less developed states, an issue that has to do with host communities concessionary admission. 65%. In other words, those who ought not to be in the university system are those that are in majority in the university system. They account for 65%. The remainder 35% are just the ones on merit. What can you do about that? We should be able to, the National University Commissions Act should be amended to grant real autonomy to the universities, such that the National University Commission stop breathing down the necks of the universities and the JAMB is completely abolished. If a university wants to admit only 3,000 because it has only about 600 staff to cope with, you don't force it to admit 30,000 students. And then the ratio of teacher to students is so low. In fact, there are some classes that I have that the students there in the last 10 years, 14 years that have been in OAU had not been less than 1,700. 1,700. I teach that class using megaphone. Is it not a shame? Using megaphone. How many people will in that class, more than 1,700, will ever be able to get what I say? How many of them? Yet, government continues to establish universities upon universities. For example, President Goodluck Jonathan, when he was leaving in May of 2015, established with fiat, without any law whatsoever, 10 separate federal universities. 10, I tell you. Now, this government has continued on the path, on the self-destructive path of establishing universities of without consequence. University of no consequence. Rural amenity universities that are better, that are just a little better than modern schools.
Dr. Ogunyemi, these are serious issues going on in the university education system, I must say. And kudos to you. I mean, you're doing a very good work teaching 1,700 students in the class with a megaphone. It's World Teachers Day, and we must appreciate you all. Thank you so much. We can go on and on. Of course, this conversation will continue on how to better the education system in Nigeria. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.